Yeah. No, because I would have gone. I mean, I was like when she announced, I was like,
oh, it was last spring. Yeah, I remember it.
Then maybe a reminder should have been sent up. The first time I heard about it was meeting professional development class, and she may have mentioned it.
Well, I know because I pumped my heart.
Yeah, but I maybe I do it the first time. I was not aware. That'll take me.
Yeah, I know.
Because I love learning, and it turns out it's something that I'm firmly out. I'm not trying to stay, I'm just telling you that in the future.
I see.
Starting in 3 weeks.
There you go.
I'm actually trying to go.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, yeah, it is. It's the state of Connecticut. And I had somebody come.
Martha's gonna be late,
Yes.
but she's coming forward. We need one more before we can start.
Rebecca's not coming. I haven't heard from Susanna. 2021 regular meeting of the Mansfield Board of Education. My name is Kathy Ward, Board Chair. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. Jill, will you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Susanna Everett. Martha Kelly.
Be late.
Edith Allison.
Here.
Rebecca Aubrey. David Matrico.
Here.
Catherine Hollis.
Present.
Elizabeth Verge. Kelly Zimmerman.
Here. Great, thank you, Jill. Edith, would you read our mission statement, please?
It is the mission of the Mansfield Public Schools in partnership with the Mansfield community to ensure that each and every child develops the knowledge, skills, and dispositions essential for civic engagement and personal excellence in learning, life, and work within our local and global community.
Great, thank you very much, Edith. That brings us to approval of minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 23rd, 2021 special meeting? Dave, thank you. Second, Edith, thank you. Are there any objections to approving these minutes? Any abstentions? All right, minutes are approved. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 23rd, 2021 workshop? Thank you, Edith. Second? Going once, going twice. Thank you, Dave. Are there any objections to approving these minutes? Any abstentions? All right, minutes approved. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 6, 2021 special meeting? Thank you, Edith. Second? Thank you, Dave. Any objection to approving these minutes? Any abstentions? Minutes are approved. Thank you. I would like to apologize. We have recognition and celebration listed on this agenda, but that was an error. We will be celebrating the Para-Educator of the Year and the Teacher of the Year at our October 28th meeting. So my apologies for that. Also, we have with us tonight Susan Pinckney from PSKP Studios and Scott Pellman from Colliers. So in order to not have them sit around and wait for us to do all this business, I am going to move under information, presentations, and actions, the approval of furniture, fixtures, equipment, specifications, and technology specifications up to the top of that agenda item, unless anyone has objections to that. Is that all right with you? Sure.
Your agenda item is actually information, presentations, and actions. So I don't think that requires a motion on your part.
Thank you very much. All right, so that brings us to our first hearing for visitors. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? Jill, do we have communications?
Yes, Kathy, we have a congratulatory letter to Kathy Ward from the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, also known as CABE, on earning the Master Board of Education member designation. Congratulations, Kathy.
Thank you.
And we also have a letter from the State of Connecticut Board of Education acknowledging the work that the entire Board of Ed and the superintendent are doing in support of schools.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any additions to the present agenda? That brings us to committee reports. Personnel, Kelly?
Yes, the Personnel Committee met, and we are going to share our recommendations in executive session.
Great. Thank you very much. Now on to information, presentations, and actions. Approval of furniture, fixtures, equipment, technology specifications.
Great. As you mentioned, we have Scott Pellman from Colliers and Susan Pinckney from TSKT Studios here to review the FF&E, also known as furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and the technology plans. Jamie Russell is also in the audience, should we need him. These were presented to you on October 6th. I'm going to actually ask Scott to get us started to just share the process that we need to engage in with the state regarding this next phase of the school construction project.
Thank you, Kelly. Good evening, everyone. Scott Pellman from Colliers.
Scott, you are unmuted for whatever reason. We cannot hear you.
Oh, okay. I'll try and come back in.
Susan, could you try to speak just to be sure we can hear you?
I can hear Scott.
No, we can't hear Susan either. Okay, hold on just a second.
And I can hear you, Susan.
Like a buzzing noise every time Kelly talks. There's like this buzzing noise around.
I don't know. It must be.
Scott or Susan, did you try?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Hello.
Got it.
Hear us?
Thank you.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can. Can you hear us?
Oh, yes, we can. Okay, good.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. Good evening, everyone. Scott Pellman from Colliers. So, yeah, I understand that Jamie and Susan presented the FF&E and the technology, the specifications and estimates at your last meeting. So what we're looking to do tonight is this is just a procedural approval, very similar to when you approved the main project to go to bid. There's a form that the state of Connecticut requires approval from the Board of Education. It's called the SCG 042. I believe that form was sent off to you, and it's got a fairly lengthy approval motion associated with it. But in essence, what it does is it acknowledges that the board has been presented the furniture and technology specifications and estimates, and that they have approved them and are approving them for the team, for Susan and her team and Jamie and myself, to take those to the state of Connecticut for review and approval to go out to bid. So again, this is just a procedural step in the overall process.
Okay, so this afternoon, the school building committee saw these plans. They also need to give their approval, and they did so this afternoon. Again, you had a chance, or Susan, to share all of this with you on October 6th. So I won't ask her to repeat that, nor will I ask Jamie to repeat his presentation, but here's an opportunity for you to ask any additional questions that you might have and then proceed to a motion.
Anyone have any questions? Catherine?
Keeping in mind that I wasn't at the 6th meeting, are we replacing everything? Are we able to, like, when I saw this page here, I kind of went, ew. So are we going to be using?
So Susan, she's referring to the custodial equipment page, and I think the answer is probably it's a different building with different needs, but I'll let you follow up with that.
Yes, the custodial equipment very often is included in the FF&E specifications. There was some discussion today at the building committee meeting about whether or not you do need the outdoor equipment or whether you may already have use of DPW equipment or something like that. And that is entirely possible. It's not like you are committing to purchasing it today. It's simply a matter of getting approval so this project can go out to bid once we have approval from the state. So the equipment that is in there, we can get pricing on it. And if the awards come back and you guys decide, look, we don't really want to spend the money on this, we think we can accommodate it in another way, we don't have to buy it. But it is part of the package, which is something that's fairly typical. The outdoor equipment is not considered reimbursable by the state. They do allow for equipment that is that maintains the actual interior of the building. They just don't allow for equipment for buildings and for the grounds. So that's why that is included in there. Does that help answer the question?
Can I just clarify? So is this similar to when we put together all of the specs for the interior of the building, that if we didn't include them, we wouldn't be able to add them? So Susan and Scott, the question, you might not have been able to hear that, was, is this similar to when we designed the original ed specs, that if we hadn't included something in the specs up front, we wouldn't be able to add it later?
Well, sometimes you can add certain things depending, but very often the state is going to try to kind of hold your feet to the fire on the ed specs. But they do understand that needs come up that maybe were not discussed in the initial ed specs. And if we have a good argument, we can usually convince them.
Yeah, it's better to include it now and be safe and not necessarily purchase it than not include it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Catherine?
So on the bottom of the page, there's 4 items. I don't know if you can see us at all. But.
Yes. Okay.
So I don't recall us ever having one of these even.
What you're looking at there, you have a carpet extractor, you have a floor scrubber, a floor buffer, you have a carpet spot remover, and there is also a shop. I believe there's a type of a shop vac in there, an industrial shop vac. Does that help?
I'm just saying the spot remover. I don't know that we even own one of those at this time.
We do.
In the school system?
Yeah, the size is based on the size of the building. So what you're looking at is probably something a little bit bigger than what we currently have.
Is it?
So I
recognize something like that in our buildings.
I'm going to repeat that because Alan Corson is answering from the audience and he's not mic'd over there. So he is saying that we do have a spot remover. It may not be as large as the one that you see there. But I would say the equipment that's included on that page is all equipment necessary for, remember, the flooring is different in this building, and the carpeting is mostly carpeting that children will be sitting on, because most of the flooring is of a material other than carpet. So these items are necessary to support the upkeep of the building.
And what about the outside equipment? I mean, doesn't this town take care of like plowing our driveways and all that kind of stuff?
So as Susan mentioned, that was some of the discussion at the building committee today, and there probably will be more discussion about which of those outside equipment pieces are necessary for us to own and which we can use that are already owned by DPW.
And then the other thing is some of the package was just impossible to read. It was so small, even with magnifying glass.
Are there any other questions? All right, are we, Susanna?
It's not really a question, just a comment. I just appreciate how, again, from last week, just how forward thinking everyone has been, again, given all of the current difficult environment about getting anything on time. I appreciate that we bring so, on top of it.
Great, thank you. Catherine?
I do have one other question. Are we getting rid of our smartphones?
So Jamie can answer that question for you.
Hey, Catherine. So the question was about whether or not we're getting rid of smartboards. So in the elementary schools, we've been very intentional about doing as much as we can not to replace the existing smartboards and just extending their life. As we do with the school construction project, we could replace when they're due, but get reimbursement. So the new school will have smartboards. It's a different type. The older smartboards that we have now are like a plastic board that a projector projects on. That's no longer where the technology is. Now they're more like, almost like a TV at home, but think of it as a large screen TV that's touch capable. So we'll have the same capabilities, it's just the technology has shifted, and we waited to do the replacement until the construction project so we could get the reimbursement.
So are those smart boards still working, or, I mean, is there some way to like recycle them, or?
Sure, yeah. The existing elementary school smart boards in many cases are not. We've been kind of holding off on those and kind of moving them around and shifting parts depending on who needed it, who didn't. What will happen to those old boards is we'll strip them for parts because we still have ones at the middle school that use those parts, and so we'll use those as spares. For anything we can't use, we'll make sure we recycle it though.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right then, Edith, may I have a motion, please?
I move that we hereby certify that these final plans and project manuals for FF&E and technology as prepared for bidding and dated October 7th, 2021, and the professional cost estimates completed in accordance with level 3 of ASTM International Standard E1557, standard classification of building elements and related site work, Uniformat 2, for this project dated October 7th, 2021, have been reviewed and approved for this project on the dates shown above.
Good job, Edith. Thank you very much. Would you repeat that? No, I'm just kidding. Do I have a second? Thank you, Dave. And any further discussion? Catherine?
By approving this, are we also approving that we don't have to buy stuff that we don't want, we just determine later we don't need? Because I'm assuming we're.
Right, so what you're actually approving is the plan itself so that it can be submitted for review at the State Department. And then the school building committee will actually make the final determinations once the project goes out to bid of exactly which pieces will be purchased.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Catherine? The motion passes. Thank you. Scott and Susan, thank you, and Jamie, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Doing double duty, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On to the superintendent report.
Great. A little bit further away, a little harder to see than I used to. Okay, got it. So you have a set of slides for tonight at your table, and several things that have been happening around the district now that school is up and truly running, and I wanted to give you an update on some of those things this evening. So the first update is some very exciting news about the elementary strings program. I guess I'm doing something wrong.
To share this.
Okay. Oh, because we're in a Zoom meeting. And we have to keep that Zoom meeting on even though nobody left on the other side?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Jamie.
Okay, so first off, strings program. You all will remember this from last spring. I came to you and said, hey, we have an opportunity. There's an open part-time strings position at E.O. Smith and a retirement from Mansfield Suzuki Program. And so we combined efforts. We were able to hire a full-time violin teacher. She teaches half of her day at E.O. Smith and half of her day with us at the elementary level. And we were able to maintain our cello teacher from the Mansfield Suzuki Program. And we altered the program a bit so that it was no longer what we call a pay-to-play program, but we, as a district, accepted the cost of this entire program. So we're paying for, obviously, the shared teacher, and we are paying the full cost of the cello teacher. In the past, we paid half the cost, and that charge is a per student charge. Also, thanks to the Mansfield Suzuki Program, they have a little side nonprofit where they've been collecting instruments for years to make available to students at low cost rentals or sometimes even no cost. And we've combined efforts there a bit too, so that some of the students taking strings this year will have an opportunity for one of those low cost rentals. And we also have assumed the cost of purchasing any of the literature that they use. So the instructional books, which are books that you write in a lot when you're providing instruction, and really something the child needs to keep. We have maintained the Suzuki philosophy following a program called Suzuki in the Schools. In that program, students are provided a small group instruction once per week and a small group ensemble once per week. In the past, that came often before or after school, and parents were required to attend. Now the program will happen during the school day for most students. There will still be a few who it just works better for before or after school, and parent attendance will be optional. So if you recall, we opened this up thinking that it would result in more students being interested. And so we said, well, we're going to start this grades 2 to 4 and let families know in our literature that K-1 students are welcome to join a wait list, but they would be accepted on a space available basis. Well, we have a wonderful problem. We have no space available for K-1 students. Because our enrollment, it really jumped considerably. So you can see here that we have some returning cello and violin students and many new students. And the bulk of these students are students in grades 3 and 4, with the exception of 3 grade 1 students who started their instruction last year. And although they started in kindergarten, and certainly we allowed them to continue this year. So 3 grade 1 students. The remainder of the students are grades 2, 3, and 4, and there will be 91 students playing a string instrument in our elementary schools this year. Just to give you some perspective, for the last 5 years, from 2015 to 2020, we never had more than 74 students. And last year we hit a low of 24 students. So we're really excited, and the teachers are incredibly excited to move this forward.
Any questions? So Kelly, this is not only more accessible, but financially more accessible as well.
Correct.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Really available and open to any child that wishes in grades 2 through 4 to participate. And it will have repercussions, of course, for our middle school program, because this many children young in elementary school is likely will have even more students when they get to middle school playing a string instrument. And our 4th graders still have the option of playing a band instrument. So kind of taking that away.
Catherine?
So what are we calling the program now?
Elementary strings.
So when people call up and say, you know, because we always have parents coming and begging us to save the Suzuki program.
Yeah, it is still following the Suzuki method.
Right.
Yes.
So
You can call it a Suzuki program if you'd like. It's a Suzuki in the schools program.
I think we should keep it to that. No offense, but because of all the meetings that we've had where they've always been afraid that Suzuki's gonna leave, we might want to call it Suzuki in the schools, just to avoid any kind of.
Sure. So another thing I wanted to share with you this evening, which I'm also very excited about, this is a project that got started at least a year ago, perhaps even more, is as we have developed our curriculum, we've been searching for a way to make it accessible to our families so that students, parents, and others understand what students are taught in our schools. And we have just published The Learning Pathways, a guide to Mansfield's K-8 curriculum. This is a prototype. We will have these printed and available next week, but primarily we have made this accessible on the website, actually. It's there now, but nobody knows about it. We will be sending a communication out tomorrow to let people know that this is there. And I'm gonna see, I may lose this off the Zoom, and I apologize if I do, but should be able to see it here at least. Nope, not gonna work. Okay. Well, let's just forget that. I will show you this way. How's that? So this booklet, first off, it's intended to be an online booklet. And so the table of contents is all hyperlinked throughout the booklet so that if you're interested in a particular grade level, you just click on the table of contents. But beyond that, this booklet begins with our core beliefs and our portrait of the graduate, and then the expected outcomes at grades 2, 4, and 8 for each of our portrait of the graduate skills is displayed for parents. And then in each of our content areas, we have shared the mission of instruction in that content area and the big understandings, we call them transfer goals, and that's all explained here, big understandings that we expect students to acquire. We do something similar in our arts, PE, and world language areas. And then for every grade level, you have a nice 2-page layout that explains the actual skills that are taught in that grade level, as well as a section that offers suggestions for how families can partner with us in their child's learning. And that continues through the booklet for every grade level. I will send you all the link to this tomorrow so that you can see it. You're certainly welcome to a copy of the book when it comes in if you'd like, but we think it's a good kind of scaled back summary of the most critical things that our children learn in our schools. So we're pretty excited to have that completed. Because it looked like you had a question. Okay.
When you say that the curriculum is going to be online, I remember a teacher showing me a 3-ring binder that was about yay thick.
Yeah, no more.
And one of her complaints was, before you give me something new, would you please take 3 things out?
Right. Right. When I give you a presentation on our deep learning strategy in November, I'll actually share that evening with you what the teachers see, because this is the family-facing document. Teacher-facing document is much more engaged, and we've really built it out, and the binders are all gone, and everything is readily available for staff online.
That's
Wonderful. Okay, couple of other quick things. I'm sure you've seen the flyers around town. The MLK Mural project is ongoing. There's been a fund drive for this. It's been a great collaboration between the Mansfield Human Rights Commission, Core Mansfield, University of Connecticut, and Mansfield Public Schools, and the town of Mansfield. And my understanding is that they've raised the funds necessary for this mural. It's actually going to be created on some sort of board. I'm not exactly sure of the composition of it, but some sort of board, and then hung in sections on the front of the Mansfield Community Center. So it's not going to be painted on the brick of the community center, but it will be hung on the community center. The hope is that it will be up by November 2nd, and on Monday, on Indigenous Peoples Day, they had a community paint day and a steady stream of people all day long at the library helping to actually paint part of the mural. So we're excited to have been a part of this. And I've been asked some questions about a transportation update. I'm happy to report that M&J Bus has done a nice job of supporting our community. They have been able to increase their staffing just enough to get us over the hump, including offering some help in the office, which was really important on these days when so many changes needed to be made. We, on most days, have all of the buses that we're contracted for, and on those days when we don't, they've found a way to combine two routes. It's been, I shouldn't even say this out loud, but I think it's been about 3 weeks since we've had to notify any families that we had a shortage of buses. We also have been working, again, really cooperatively with M&J and the middle school and other middle schools in the area on our athletics programming, so that we haven't had to cancel any athletic competitions either. And we've just found ways to either leave school a little early or make the game start a little bit later. So things are going very well. It's all knock on wood. Kelly?
I have seen a few social media posts that some other schools have done things to be doing some kind of bus driver appreciation, either for athletic events or just in general. I don't know if we have a bus driver appreciation day, but I think that would be something great to build in to add food.
Yeah, I agree. We usually do something as a board for them in the fall, and I agree. It's probably time for us to do even more than that at this point. Yeah. Another collaboration I wanted to tell you about is a collaboration that is just getting underway thanks to funding through our ARP grant, and that's a collaboration across all of the schools that I guess make up the Region 19 system. So Ashford, Willington, Mansfield, and Region 19, those 4 systems have gotten together in a really serious way to consider our practices around student-centered instruction and assessment, in the hopes that the K-8 feeder schools are preparing students for the same kinds of things that they will be encountering in the high school, and to create some common understandings across and among all of the communities and the faculty. We've partnered with Great Schools Partnership out of Portland, Maine, who've been a leader in student-centered work for several years. We have worked with them to identify those things that we could do collaboratively and those ways that they could support us individually. So we think that this process is going to be a great benefit because it helps us move our work along while at the same time building that collaboration. And we expect this work to continue for at least 2 years. But I know there's been a lot of interest on the board with collaborating with E.S. Smith, so I'm pretty excited about that. And then I just wanted to remind you that on Monday, we held a professional development day. We had everybody in the district at this PD day, which is really unusual for us. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody. Nurses, custodians, secretaries, a board member, and all of our certified and non-certified classroom staff. They were separated into a couple of workshops. We continued equity training for those who hadn't had it yet. At this point, nearly, there might have been somebody who was sick, but nearly every member of the Mansfield Public Schools has gone through some element of equity training this year. Remember, we did some a few years ago as well. And the certified staff focused on the curriculum and more specifically on bringing the curriculum to life through instruction. That was for the morning. And then they had other things in the afternoon. But because we had everybody together, because it's been a stressful time for all of us, and because one of our commitments this year is to attending to the wellness of all of our staff, we had a special luncheon. And those are the photos that you see here. My thanks to Jill, who really helped pull this together. We had 2 food trucks and an Italian ice cart. And the PE staff at the middle school put out all their lawn games, and people brought their chairs and their blankets, and it was an absolutely gorgeous day, and we just had an opportunity to relax with each other and enjoy the collegiality and the weather. So it was a really nice day. And that's my report.
Next, transition plan to the new elementary school.
Yes, so we have our 3 esteemed elementary school principals here that are going to come forward and share with us the work that's been undertaken to really support transition. I think you're aware that our transition to one new elementary school actually started quite some time ago, even pre-referendum. We were designing elements of this transition, but we knew that this year was really the year where we needed to give some great attention to bringing these 3 faculties and communities together. And so my thanks to Peter and Lauren and Mike before us here for the work that they did this summer. When teachers came back to school, they were presented with a plan for transition, so they knew what was going to happen throughout the year. And they're going to give you some of the details of that. I want to start by saying that one of the things that was really apparent on Monday and in the comments that we received from staff about Monday's experience is that the work that we've done around curriculum and instruction and the goal setting work that you all helped us do is really all work that's helping us build a coherent system, a system that's all moving in the same direction. And that's going to be even more important in the next year as we bring these 3 faculties together and these 3 communities together. That coherence that we've laid as a foundation is really going to support us. So with that, I think I'm turning things over to Lauren Rodriguez, who's going to talk you through this transition timeline.
Thank you, Kelly. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you to the board for the support. Moving forward into the new building is exciting for so many people, and the feeling of support that you've given this project has just been overwhelming. I also want to thank my good colleagues here, Mike and Peter, who, while their name won't be maybe heard, they're behind every single part of this planning. Their experience in doing work like this has been so helpful to me to be able to understand some of the pitfalls, some of the things that I should be thinking about. So I hope the board understands the level of support that they have been giving me in this transition. And I also want to extend the thanks to Kelly. Kelly has put so much time and energy, she's so dedicated to the project, thinking through so many of the details with, and now bringing me along to join in that process. So it's been an exciting time, and I just wanted to talk a little bit to you about some of the plans that have been underway. I'm going to go backwards a little bit in history to tell you what's been going on for the past few months. So once the appointment was made for my position, Mike, Peter, and Kelly and Shameen actually have been putting time aside to really think about what the support plans need to look like. Some of those conversations have been about students, some have been about parents, and some have been focused on staff and community. Back September 13th, Kelly and I led a joint faculty meeting We had all faculties come together. Kelly had a chance to share some of the recent renderings of the building so that staff could really start to see themselves in the design and where and the function of the building and the exciting elements of the building. It was well received, and then after that, she had announced me, and I had a chance to talk to the staff. I've had opportunities to get to know staff through mutual opportunity over the past few years, and for some people it's new. It's been a new experience, and helping people to understand who I am, what are my goals, and how our work moving forward is going to work together was really the focal point. In addition to focusing on students, helping teachers to understand how do we bring students into this transition so that they feel like they're a part of it and they feel that they own it just as much as every one of us. So at the meeting, I also had a chance to share a 12-month transition timeline. And I believe that that's a helpful tool for me, for staff, and for everyone involved so that they know what's to come. Some people may wonder, why are we starting a transition process so early? But what I think you'll hear in the next few minutes is the kind of work that's necessary for a project like this to go over well. I share this with you just so you have a chance to see what it looks like. I'll be speaking directly to some of the bullet points that are up on the transition timeline. One of the first things that teachers really care about is having a shared Google Drive. So we do have a shared Mansfield Elementary School Drive now where work is being uploaded and shared plans are being uploaded. So there's now a place for ideas and synergy to come together. We also had a chance, many of you were a part of the board retreat a few weeks ago, and you heard Peter, Mike, and myself talk to you about some of the plans for this school development work. For the first time, we've launched a plan together for all elementary school students and staff to see themselves in one plan. We think that was a really important move so that staff could see how much we are working behind the scenes and working together to find the goal that Kelly talked about when she introduced me. That work is clear, but sometimes for staff, you have to make those connections so they could see, and have it be very visible. We also have recently getting ready to launch into some PTO meetings where Kelly and I will have a chance to address PTOs, introduce me, and be able to answer initial questions so that parents can see themselves as part of this process. One of the more exciting things that we've spent some time on is back in October 5th, just a few weeks ago, we had our first grade level team meetings. Don't forget that you have teachers that are coming together who haven't taught together in many years, and creating a plan together is something that I'm excited about moving forward with them. That first meeting was really focused on building a team culture, defining goals as a team, and determining our next actions as a team. Just as we focus on students having voice and choice, that was sort of the goal of this meeting as well, giving teachers an opportunity to talk about what do they see as the shared work, and then defining what do we want to work on. We'll have 5 of those kinds of meetings for each grade level team throughout the year. And in between, we saw that teachers, the basic things that they started to really see come together. Oh, your planning time is this time, that's mine too. Or, oh, you're doing this step goal, professional goal. I was thinking of doing the same thing. So by putting them together in a room and giving them opportunities to talk, we're already seeing a wonderful ability to communicate, collaborate together. I think it's also an important part of the plan is having opportunities to speak directly to individual staff members. That will be launched in November. I'm calling it the Hopes and Dreams Conversations. Vinton School is up first. They are currently selecting time slots to meet with me, and the purpose of that is to share a bit about themselves personally, and also their ideas and their thoughts about the new school and their own professional career. So that will be launched throughout November at Benton. And then in December, we've selected a few dates for me to go over to Goodwin and have that same opportunity to be able to speak candidly and openly about some of their thoughts and get to know each other. So the value really is on getting to know people individually, but also building a team through the grade level work together. You'll also see an update from Margaret Shady on the webpage. There is a webpage that has been dedicated to the new elementary school. Margaret and Kelly and I have been working together on that website, and it is just about uploaded after you see this timeline tonight. That'll go up on the website, and then there's going to be information on net zero, the transition planning, and also on pictures of exactly what's going on with the development of the school building. If you've driven by recently, you'll see some steel beams have been put into the building, and it's really starting to take shape. So it's getting to be very exciting every day as we look out our window. So students also continue to be the core of the thinking and our planning. At the initial staff meeting back in September, we talked a bit about next steps for students, and you're going to see in late November, early December, students coming to the new Mansfield Elementary School property, having a pen in hand and being able to sign a construction beam to show that they're a part of that process. And then we're going to make sure that we track exactly where that beam is so that we can point it out to students because it'll be somewhere placed carefully in the building. Teachers are starting to think about what their role is in helping the transition. The Southeast students have a unique opportunity to see the construction going on. But the teachers at Goodwin and Vinton are also going to be working on sharing video footage of what the recent developments are, showing some of those construction vehicles that are making such a big progress right now, and also have a chance to really think about what's coming up for them, so that everyone has an equal opportunity to be thinking about this building and transition. And to be talked about in the future, we have grade level teams that are going to be working on a shared project for students to be able to participate in towards the late winter to early spring. We'll focus on that as one of the grade level meetings. So in closing, we are very excited. I recognize there's still many groups to meet with. We have various union groups that will be interested to have opportunity to chat about what their role looks like. Determining a schedule for the new building, starting to really name out positions and rooms in the building, right? These are all real tangible, exciting things. Not quite there yet, but we're working forward, thinking through all those details so that this transition can be the most successful. We know how much time you've put into it. We know how much the community is really behind the project, and we're committed to making sure it's the biggest success that we can make it. So thank you very much. Any questions?
David?
Yes, Lauren, you mentioned you were bringing the teachers together for grades so that they could learn to work together. How many more PD days or group activities are you planning before June?
It may be hard to count, but I can say that specifically with that design, it's 5 total sessions. We're using substitutes to cover classrooms and bringing teachers in for a half day of professional learning. So it's actually 5 half days total for that time. But that's just for those joint grade level planning meetings. We will need some additional time with teachers, as we continue to develop plans. So thinking carefully about how to continue to get feedback is part of the work.
Are you using PD days?
No.
In the future, no?
Not specifically. Yeah, that is true. We are using faculty. We will be able to use faculty meeting time. This year, the 3 elementary schools have planned every faculty meeting to be held at the same time. So that's a common time that we know we'll be able to use as we get further into the year and have more need for that time. Suzanne?
It's so wonderful how thoughtful you've been about all of these pieces. I'm wondering about the same process for specialists
our school likes and all, everybody else in
Yeah,
the nurses.
There are some people I left off just for brevity, but I can tell you that special ed teams across the building, I have dates on my calendar to meet. Those teams will be met building by building. Special ed, school psychologists also will be a part of those meetings, speech pathologists. We all have individual meetings that I'll be bumping into Dr. Patwa's time because she has those established meetings already. I also didn't speak to the related arts team, but we do have a staff member that is currently on leave. We made a determination it may be better to wait until she is back so that we can really start fresh with the planning. That should be starting in January. And those staff members understand and were addressed as to why they weren't initially in this first round. But they do have opportunities during those hopes and dreams conversations. So there's multiple levels of opportunity conversation.
I really respect the relationship building that you've started with staff already. I know that it can take a while to build those relationships, and I think putting that at the forefront of this transition is really respectable and will go a long way with creating a better team dynamic quicker. My question specifically was about the student projects that they'll start working on. Do you foresee that being an opportunity to kind of gather some of those artifacts from the existing schools that we are going to have represented, or is that going to be all staff and admin decisions as to what's needed?
Oh, that's a good question. That work actually, Kelly may be a better person to speak to the artifacts, because that work went through a subcommittee through the school building committee. But I can just say that that work I don't see necessarily connected to the artifact conversation, unless a team really decides that that's where they see the future of the work.
Yeah, there is a subcommittee of the school building committee that's focused on the learning walls and the displays in the school, and the artifacts are part of that, and no decision's been made yet on that. Although each of the schools, I think it was last school year, or even been the previous one, created lists of the artifacts from each building that they thought would be important to continue to have in the new building.
And if I could just speak to that, one of the things that we found, the initial list that we made, which was probably 2 years ago, maybe even more, over time, as we really thought about the new building and we thought about the importance of the artifacts, some of that has actually diminished. We were able, and I don't know, Mike and Peter, if you want to speak to this, but in some cases, once we really started to think about things, we felt that there was better usage. We have some memorial plaques, for example, that were partnered with trees, and we don't have any remaining people within town who still are connected to some of the past people. So, there's situations where initially we thought this was very important, but over time we've started to really narrow down, and there's fewer and fewer materials that we have felt are necessary. I think that's a healthy process, and I think that over time we may even pare down more, and at the end of that we hope to have a true representative of what the most important materials really are that have to go into the building. We've also talked about maybe there's Mansfield Historical Society, could be a place for some things that maybe we don't necessarily see as fitting into the new building. So those are some of the thoughts that have come up in staff meeting conversations.
Catherine?
That would be some of those memorials to just suddenly disappear, though, because people do come back and they want to come back to see the tree and tell their kids, yeah, my childhood friend, yeah. So
some of those were donated in situations where they weren't all they weren't all not connected to someone. For the ones that were connected to people, Gordon Schimmel, for example, had someone pass in his family, and there had been a plaque at the school for this. I think it was his brother's passing, potentially for many, many years. Those kinds of examples where there isn't someone who's still in, for people who there are still community members, there's teachers who are in touch. to say, you know, we were going to be losing a rose bush, for example. We reached out to the family, and the family took the plaque and also came to take the rose bush. So in some cases, it was, you know, there wasn't really a connection. And I value the fact that we have staff who've been at the building far longer than me and know the history, and we're able to make connections like that. Southeast just needed to do that a little more quickly than Goodwin and Benton because of the current construction and the amount of trees and local parts that really we had to make quicker decisions. So I believe that same process will probably happen, you know, at Benton and Goodwin, but I just, you know, I don't know what the plan is for those buildings, but, you know.
Yeah, it sounds like a very mindful approach. So
yeah, there wasn't a thing, there was not a thing that we did not really carefully think about, look for a person who was connected to it and have a conversation with them. Yeah, it was carefully done. We even have a student memorial garden. If I could bring you all back, we had a student who passed a few years ago, and that had to be done really carefully too. We will lose that garden as part of part of the work. And the family was contacted. She was able to take some of the items from the garden and put it in her own property to be able to, and understood, you know, the family understood that we're under a big construction project and valued that we've had this space for many, many years. And luckily there have not been any hard feelings in the process.
Any other comments or questions? Well, thank you very much for all of the work that you've done. I can't imagine how time consuming this is, but it's greatly appreciated. Just the thoughtfulness that you're putting into it. It's to echo what Kelly said about taking care of the staff and the students. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'll continue on with other items under information and presentations. Next is the annual October 1 enrollment report. So, you know, every year on October 1st, we have to take the official count of the number of students in our schools, and I always share that information with you shortly thereafter. So just to give you the last 5-year look, you can see that our enrollment, as expected, is declining. We kind of held our own for a few years, but we knew that the decline was coming, and it appears that it's before us. And I would say, as I go through these slides, I think you'll see that, in fact, the decline is also partly affected by COVID and the uncertainties that have been around us with regards to COVID. This is the enrollment by school. You can see that 2 of our elementary schools have dipped well below the 200 students. Benton is hovering right around that 200 mark. And for the first time in a very long time, Mansfield Middle School has dropped below 500 students. That is even lower than was projected. We were projected to have about 493 students at the middle school this year, but you can see that we're about 20 less than that. And if you continue on to this slide and you take a look at the grade levels, I have the last round of projections done for Mansfield Middle School, and I can tell you that in grade 5, we had 8 fewer students, and in grade 8, we have 7 fewer students, and just a couple of others in grades 6 and 7. When your numbers get this small, losing 7 or 8 students over projections starts to make a little bit of a difference. At least it does in your bottom line. It's not going to make a huge difference, as you probably saw in the number of students per classroom, but we are starting to see the overall population dip for sure. Catherine?
You made some reference to COVID.
Mm-hmm.
How is COVID affecting the enrollment? Homeschooling or?
No, not homeschooling. Our homeschooling numbers are not terribly different from what they were in last year, where we had a little bit of an uptick. And of those that are homeschooled, we know that there are several of them who talked about returning once their children are vaccinated. I think what has happened is that the number of students that would typically come to us because their family members are involved in doctoral or postdoctoral work at UConn has really diminished. We used to see that especially at the middle school, where it was not uncommon to have a pretty significant number of new students coming in every year. And we just, Lauren is still here. Southeast used to see the impact of this as well. And, you know, again, if you look at that Southeast number this year, 161 students, and that's a pretty low number, as is Goodwin's number, 152 students. Both of those in the past are schools that have benefited from the young families that moved to town. So we think that's what we can attribute this to. Although I have to say, you know, looking at the peak crowd of projections, we're really close at the elementary school. So he updated those for us last year, and we're only a few students off from what he projected. So he has been seeing these trends. And again, you know, I think as we are ready to embark on a new school, it's good to know that the trend that was projected 5 years ago is truly playing out. So just sharing also with you, we did have projected numbers at each elementary school. Now, it's getting a little bit tricky for us to use some of the projected enrollments. And in fact, in the report that you have, you'll see that there's one report where we tried to use some projected numbers, but we had to take them from two different reports. One year when the report looked at individual schools, one year when the report didn't. That we tried to combine those numbers. I'm going to caution you to you know, not looking that carefully at some of the combined numbers on those enrollments presented in that report. We'll have Pete Crowder update his demographic study for us again. And now he also will have had the experience of seeing what's happened in our community during this COVID period. And I'm curious to see what kind of projections he presents for us moving forward. Stephen?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure how our cost per pupil is calculated, but it's just going to negatively impact that.
It will. Every time you lose a student, right, it increases the cost for every other student. Yes.
Is this a trend we're going to see across the state?
Well, you know, it's interesting. It depends on the part of the state you live in, because what has happened in the New York border communities, so the Fairfield County areas, that their student populations have actually increased. And they've increased because of people moving out of the city into the suburbs. So I guess everybody's experiencing impact. It's just that it's not all impacted in the same direction. The other thing that I should point you to in the report is the page that shows you the number of students per classroom. And one of the things that you will see right-sided a bit is when we move into one elementary school, that there will be less staff needed, not always just in classroom staff, but you may remember from the pre-referendum staffing report that we did, that there will be a significant reduction in staff across the entire school. So things like nurses and psychologists and secretaries and custodians and some teaching positions as well, to the point that pre-referendum, we were estimating a savings in staffing and energy combined of about $900,000. So that's going to reduce our overall costs, which will obviously reduce our per pupil cost. So we're going to have one more year of a little bit of sticker shock, and then I think it's going to size itself in the new building.
Thank you.
Yep. Martha?
Are you finished?
I'm just going to show
go ahead.
show you the last slide. No, it's super simple. This is the projected enrollment for the middle school. And I bring this to your attention because what happens to elementary students is they age and go up to the middle school, and then we have fewer elementary students. We're obviously going to have fewer middle school students. But this graph is always a little shocking to me to see how much the middle school could decline in the coming years, which frankly could also result in a reduction in staffing there as well. Okay, that's it.
Okay. You mentioned homeschooling.
Yes.
How many, I didn't see that noted on here. Do you
Yeah,
have
we
a
don't.
ballpark idea?
Yeah, I think, Jill, is it 11, 18? And you're gonna have to remind me where we ended up with homeschool this year.
Let's say 20 or 21.
20 or 21, okay. Okay.
All right. I just had a couple more questions. Does anybody else? Is homeschool? It's
Not
not,
COVID,
No, homeschool is due to COVID, absolutely.
but we had homeschoolers before, so is this 2021 number, is that higher than the average?
Yes, it's higher than it is typically for us.
you said about 10, 8
Yeah.
or 10, right?
Yeah, 11, 12 some years.
14.
Yeah, but yes, it is a little bit higher. But again, we already know of 3 or 4 families with multiple children each who have said, we're doing this because our young children are not vaccinated and we will return. But they're not typically in our enrollment count because,
Yeah, no, I was
yeah.
curious.
Yeah.
How that ended up. On page 9 of our packet.
Yep.
Where it talks to this in middle school.
Yes.
On grade 7, there are 120 students. So for PE, there's 123. So do we have some students from other grades coming in?
It may be that you have some students who, because of some special needs or something, to be more than once.
Okay, yeah, I was curious to
Yeah.
see how that worked out.
That could be the
Yeah,
reason.
and then there are a lot of classes with 1 student. Is that a one-on-one class?
No, it's not really a class of 1. This happens because of student schedules. And again, I think some of it has to do with children who are assigned to a special education caseworker, but attend a gen ed class. There are no classrooms of 1 child. Yeah, and it's a funky, yeah. We don't have, I gotta be honest, it is hard to get a really good system for middle school to really get a good handle. I think, the best we can do is kind of look at an average by period, like literally see each period of the day.
Yeah. And then on page 10, I had a question. Where on the top graph where it says change on the right hand side, it has 20, 21, it has minus 37. I counted minus 42. So
Yeah, and that's
how do we?
Well, that's because look at that middle column there, the enrollment projection. We tried to mash together enrollment projections from 2 different years. So those are not really clean numbers this year because we had different reports run, and that was a necessity because of the reports we had to submit to the State Department for enrollment projections. So I think the best enrollment projection that we can use for an overall number, and I did look that up today, is an overall number that we were given in the 2020 enrollment projection. The overall number for our district, I wrote this down. How did I do? Yes, here it is. The overall projection was 1,013. Now that was the projection made last year for the overall number of students in our district. So we are 17 students lower than that projected number.
Okay, well, it says that I was just assuming that the 2021 figure was a standard,
It's a good assumption.
A hard number, a true
Right.
number, I guess.
And unfortunately, it is not this year. So yes, but you're right. I would have assumed the same thing.
Okay. All right, that was it. Thank you for answering.
Sure.
So going back to your class sizes, the ones, I remember we've always had issues with the ones to where to sit on, put them and stuff.
Yeah.
Are any of these, how do you calculate with kids that go to, your name is Mrs. Job and Mr. Reed, reading and math?
Those are intervention programs, and I do not believe you see those numbers here.
Okay.
Because those are in addition to language arts and mathematics regular classrooms.
So if they're there, they're not counted out counted in the main.
No, they are counted in the gen ed classes, which is why we do not count them in the intervention class.
Any other questions? David?
How confident are you of these numbers? Maybe not being exact, but in the ballpark, looking at 2025, are we really going to have that drop?
According to the study we did last year, and I have to say, when that study came in last year, I thought, well, you know, our numbers dropped last year because of COVID, because of the reasons I explained to you with not having as many students move into district. Well, now this is the second year that's happened. So when you're talking about middle school enrollment, the projections are based on two things: actual bodies in seats currently, right? Because we don't have to guess how many births we're going to have. We know how many kids in 5 years based on numbers in seats. But then there's also a formula that he looks at based on past practice of what the retention rate of those students is and what the change in enrollment has been year over year, suggesting students moving in. So when he sees less change year over year as we've experienced this year, my assumption is that more value is placed on the actual students in seats, right? Which is low. So I have a feeling that when we ask him to repeat this study this year, the numbers you see right there are not going to change that much, because now we have 2 years of experience with these low numbers. Whether or not that holds is significantly dependent upon what happens to international travel, I believe.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. MMS modernization study.
Yeah, it's actually a great segue into this last item, and I've invited Alan Corson to be with us this evening because we are starting to take a look at the middle school facility in more depth. And I want to just set you up again with some reminders about how we got to this point. So in 2017, when you had the facility planning study completed, there was a set of 6 goals identified that came from the community as desires for their facilities. So we would like to be able to meet those goals. We also know that our instructional spaces and the infrastructure of the building at the middle school need a good review, and that there are some renovation and maintenance needs that are beyond probably what we can do on a pay-as-you-go basis. And so these are the 3 areas of focus for the modernization study. And again, it comes from these 6 goals that were established from the community study that was done. These were goals that came from extensive interviews, surveys, and focus groups with members of the community. And I'm going to remind you of this again as well. When we first started to think about our facility, we began to identify school by school, and this is the middle school page, all of the projects that we knew of in the next 3 years that needed to be addressed at the middle school. And then we said there are a whole bunch of other things that need to be addressed. And some of them can wait a few years, some of them wait a few more years, but they're all going to need to be addressed. And we started working our way through addressing all of these things in these first 3 columns year after year, to the point, this is where we are this year. And I want to call your attention to these first 2 columns, because these are the things that we have been able to address in this budget year, meaning that of this great big spreadsheet that you saw over here, the only thing left after this school year for us to address are very few small budget items in 22-23, and then much larger budget items like the gym air conditioning, which there isn't any right now, and the elevator, and the windows, and the portables, and one more, there's a flooring piece, there was electrical system upgrade, and the sprinkler system, right? So in order for us to have the best plan to figure out how to address those, we thought, and we shared this with you last year, that we should conduct a modernization study. And so we went out to bid for it, and the winning bidder, interestingly enough, was Colliers, which is kind of helpful to us because they know us. Alan had some conversations with the staff at Colliers. Scott Pellman actually was here earlier this week to take his first walk through the middle schools, start to orient himself to the building. And Alan's here tonight to answer any questions you might have about how this study will be conducted. And then I'll share a little bit with you with what happens after the study.
Yeah. You pointed to the 450 saying portables. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Actually,
I'm trying to read. I
if you
need
take
this to
window
read.
replacement and go straight across to
Demolition of
that
portables.
450.
450, yep.
You said that was portables.
Yeah. We need to attend to the portables because they have some structural needs. And with the declining enrollment, the question is, should we be demolishing the portables?
Right. I guess my question is what? We don't know what the cost is.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I skip lines?
It's window replacement.
It's window replacement was 450. I'm sorry, portables is a question mark. Got it.
So that's, okay.
Yeah.
That's my confusion. It's
Sorry
like,
about that.
what takes $450 that I'll have a knockdown party?
Well, you'd be surprised. So, yes, windows, which I had also mentioned.
Yeah, windows, because of the age of the windows, you're probably likely going to be dealing with some PCB with the windows for the caulking. You can either test it and you find out that you have it or you don't, and then that price could change, or you presume that you have it and then you deal with it accordingly. To presume you have it, the process is less than if you test it and find you actually have it. Because then they get into digging up the soils all around the school and everything. That gets, the price could double or triple off of that.
So, Alan, anything else you want to share about the process that Colliers will be undertaking?
Sure. We started into this, but we're at the very beginning phases of it. It's roughly a 7-month process that we're looking at and broken down into 5 steps. Right now, we're in the existing conditions investigation, and for us, it's been getting a lot of blueprints together for them, a lot of any old studies that we had on the building. We're looking at energy bills, we're looking at, and for them to get familiar with the building that way. We've also raised a lot of these things that are on there, but I'll go through a list of those. Arts room, area too small. Music strings does not fit in the current room. Aging portables, defining enrollment. Main office not at the front entrance. Elevator, an issue on borrowed time. Age of library, and look into improvements, even though it's a newer part. Now it's still almost 20, 30 years old. Cafeteria kitchen, poorly used.
Poorly used.
It says empty most of the day, cafeteria. Space, the space is poorly used.
Auditorium could use a refresh. The facility needs some of those we mentioned already, the windows, elevator, flooring, classroom cosmetics. Assessment of general mechanics and infrastructure, and more flexible student space in general. Outside of that, some of the other steps, from there we move on to preliminary design program initiatives. So if you're talking with people, at the building, talking with Kelly and principal, educational programs, initial space summary, and site development requirements. So looking at what we can do on that site. From there, move into concept development. So they'll take a look again at facility and maintenance and approve upon spaces. And getting towards the end, we'll be looking at budgeting, comparisons of doing a renovate as new versus paying for non-funded capital projects and breaking it down that way. And then in March, we're looking at the contract to submit his plan.
And he's willing to come midway through if you would like an update. He certainly will come, or the team will come in March to share the final recommendations. And then, much as we did with the original facility study, it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to advance any projects at the middle school. But, you know, I do think that you've done an amazing job, Alan, and with the board's support of updating as much as we can at the middle school. And we're just at that point where you know, much of this work also could be reimbursed by the state, and we have a pretty high reimbursement rate. So it's just important for us to have a solid plan.
Can you just remind me, I forget what the reimbursement rate is. I know it's different.
Yeah, it varies every year. It's a little bit higher for renovation versus new construction, but you know, we're probably in the upper 60% for renovation.
I thought something had to do with the square footage per student, and if we were losing students.
Well, so if you're in an existing building, it's different than if you're building a new building, for one thing. And I thought you were going to ask me something different about that when you started to say that. Oh, there is a regulation about it. In order to qualify as a renovated new, you need to renovate a certain percentage of your square footage. And that's the other thing. Maybe there's not that much square footage that needs to be renovated. So that's the other thing that they have to look at. Does that make sense?
Yeah, except for one of the reasons why we did in the middle school was because we could not renovate the three, not middle, elementary school, because we couldn't renovate the three schools to new because there were not enough students per square footage. Is that right, Marcus?
Yes, so that's what he told us at the State Department. He said, your buildings are too big. We will not authorize, we will not approve a renovate project because you've got too much space. That's different than an existing building. I think it's your only middle school. They're not going to let the building deteriorate, right? You got to do something.
Okay, so
there.
that's the key point. There is one building versus three buildings.
Yeah.
And is Alan going to give us a copy of this list once?
A copy of that list? Well, as soon as we complete it with Colliers, we'd be happy to make a copy for you. But we're still kind of discussing that with them.
That's what I meant. Like,
yeah.
He's completed doing whatever you're doing. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Dave, and then Martha.
When we're talking about reimbursement, does that cover everything? The generator, for example, upgrading electrical, putting in whatever facilities for the auditorium. Does reimbursement cover all those things?
That's something that we're going to take a look at. It's to be determined yet how much they cover on any one of those things.
Right, and because there are lots of rules and regulations, like would they cover the generator? I don't know, because it's outside of the school building, right? I will tell you, if the auditorium was in your elementary school, they might not cover because they no longer support the idea of auditoriums in elementary schools. So there are all these little rules that, you know, that's why you need some help figuring it all out.
Well, considering that the town uses the auditorium quite a bit, and that the school, I believe, is an emergency shelter, which
it's not.
Our generator, does the town share in board's costs of these items?
Yeah, so I'll remind you that the generator is, that entire cost has come from the town's capital fund and has not come from your operating funds. Just to set the record straight, the middle school actually is not an emergency shelter. E.O. Smith is. Yeah.
Martha?
Yeah, when I was looking on page 11, the list of goals, this was written some time ago, and so now I think one of the goals somehow we need to think about healthy spaces and ventilation, and so that might be. So I would look through here And I didn't really see anything that honed in on that.
That's an excellent point, and that happens to be one area where we actually excel at the middle school, because was it less than 10 years or about 10 years ago, the entire HVAC system was replaced, and the middle school actually has excellent ventilation, and it's one of the things we looked at the start of COVID, and you can speak more to it, Alan, than I can, but it is a top system.
Most of the school is served by units that take 100% outside air. They do that with inside of them. They have what's called a heat recovery wheel. So it transfers heat from outgoing air to ingoing air, and that helps out. So it's pretty much a state-of-the-art unit for that, and it brings in 100% outside air. So.
And even though it's almost 10 years old now, it's still a state-of-the-art unit. So.
Thank you. I feel that we're going to have some kind of pandemic for quite a number of years. You know, it's like the plague in the 1500s. It stayed on for a couple hundred years. I mean, just
I'm more optimistic than you.
They keep coming out with another and another. And so I think we're always going to have caution.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much, Alan.
Thanks, Alan. I appreciate you staying.
Yeah, appreciate all your good work too.
Definitely.
Staying on top of all this.
Definitely, just absolutely.
You want me around for the questions?
Oh, sure. Let's stick around. I'm going to move into the school. This is pretty exciting. This is an aerial view. A photo was taken today. So we talked before about steel going up. You can see an awful lot of steel. It looks like we even got 2 stories here, which is really exciting to think about. Foundation is nearly completely laid. It looks like right here, they're still getting ready to pour some foundation, but you can see good foundation all the way around here so that the building shape is almost complete. There was a little bit of a hiccup with finding some organic matter in the soil close to the building when they were digging for some of this area. I believe it was, Ellen, right? They were digging for the water tank and the grease pit or whatever that's called. And they found some organic material, and when they followed the line of the organics, they found that it did go beneath foundation that had already been poured. So they actually had to remove some of the poured foundation. The good news is, from what I heard at the building committee today, is that they continue to find some small pockets of organic materials, but at this point they feel they've tested everywhere where there is foundation, and they've got an excellent handle on a few other areas of organics that need to be replaced. But once they do that, we're in really good shape. We have those meetings every 2 weeks. Question still comes up every 2 weeks. Are you on target for your completion date? And so far we're moving forward. We're just starting to hear about some supply chain issues that might affect us, but we don't have any of the details yet. So we'll keep moving forward.
Catherine, please elaborate on organic.
I'd be happy to. I'm glad I wasn't the only one that didn't understand that.
You're learning a lot, aren't you?
I'm learning so much. So when you dig, the soil all should be a similar color. And when they find a soil that's a different color, in this case, it's a darker color, they know that that's because something has happened in that area and that's not the natural soil. And what they have discovered is that this darker color is likely due to the disposal of tree stumps and other organics that were on the site at one time and were cleared and dumped and covered over, right? And so what happens now is that that becomes softer soil. So you don't want to build your foundation on top of something that might not have over years, might not have the stability of the natural soil. So they remove the organics, the dark stuff, and they put in good fill so that they've got a solid foundation.
You had me worried.
I love being able to share that with you because it shows me how much I've learned.
I'm wondering how the building process is playing with having a live school next door.
Having a live school next door.
Yeah.
Well, first I want to give my thanks to Newfield Construction, our construction company, right from the beginning last May when we first met with them, and with Lauren's advocacy, they were just great about doing everything they could to be as least disruptive as possible. And so the site itself, they've done a great job of giving our kids as much space and opportunity. As far as disruption, I haven't heard you say too much about that yet, Lauren. I don't know. You're welcome to come up if there's anything else you want to add.
I would say disruption is a heavy word. There is an impact on students. We do feel vibrations. We do hear noises. We do have windows open because of COVID, and that's still our ventilation strategy. But to say it's disrupting, I wouldn't say that. It is a factor. I think our families have been very patient. I think our students have been excited by some of the opportunity to see some of the trucks that are out there. But I think that we do have moments where you feel everything shake, and it's just a reality. It seems like the students have really settled in, and teachers as well with the impact. But I wouldn't say that it's been too difficult. I appreciate that it's at the distance though, because I'm curious if it was right up against us. I've heard about other principals who've had renovation projects within the building, and that could be more difficult.
Just so this is kind of hard at this part. Let me see if I can move this part a minute. So this is the school. To give you a little bit of sense. I mean, this is a picture from high above, probably a little bit closer than it looks by the picture here, but there is some space there.
If I could just quickly say the teachers that are in those classrooms, we have a kindergarten classroom that's right at that corner, and we have a preschool classroom that's on the other corner, and they're generally busier classrooms. We thought that may have made good sense, but again, the teachers, have been wonderful and keep the students engaged, and even take the students on walks sometimes so they can see the what the real up close and personal is of the project.
Kelly, may I ask, how did they get this photo?
With a drone.
Yeah.
And Newfield took this.
This is super helpful too, thank you, because I do go on the camera all the time. Like there's it's a very exciting and reinforcing to see, but you wouldn't get that perspective.
No,
right? That's
no.
really helpful.
Yeah, the drone picture really helps.
It's really great.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks.
MMS roof project update?
Sure.
Want Dave to do that?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And Alan stuck around in case you need him.
As far as I know, we're on schedule. As far as I've been told, we have no technical problems with the roof. No secret things come up, like hazardous materials. The only issue we had at the last meeting was we had a $30,000 jump in supply costs because the supply chain is being interrupted. I mean, so we all know that. It sounded to me sincere, legitimate, and I voted with the rest of the committee on approving that. However, I did voice some concern that in the future, I would like to see some real documentation before we approve every supply thing. I don't want it to be a cash cow if there are some suppliers down the line that don't have the integrity that our builders have.
So Dave, did you say we were on schedule?
Yeah, as far as I know, we're on schedule, maybe a little bit off, but we are under budget. So the 30,000 didn't put us over the budget as far as I know. And so the project is coming along. And yeah, we may have some supply issues in the future, but we want to look at them carefully.
I think, Alan, you can correct me, but I think the construction firm has procured all of the other supplies except for the insulation, which is what's due to be delivered.
Correct, and I was talking to him today, he says it's the week of the 18th to the 20th in particular of that week, so where you see some of those supplies sitting over there, if you've been over that way in the front field there, that will be loading up with a lot of stuff, so that would be good to see.
Yeah, yeah, so I'm not thinking we should have any other procurement issues because everything else was ordered and received except for the insulation.
So is the insulation is what was the extra 30,000?
It was, yes, it was in the insulation, that was correct. And I believe most of that comes from DuPont, so.
Right.
Any other questions? Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Dave. That brings us to new business, superintendent contract. I would like someone to move that we move this item, new business item, to after we come out of executive session. Do I have somebody who make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Edith. Do I have a second? Okay. Thank you, Susanna. Anyone object to this motion to move this agenda item? Any abstentions? Martha?
Excuse me, you're moving it into executive session?
No,
or-
we're moving it to after we come out of executive session. Okay. The logic just seemed all right, so that passes. So that brings us to the second hearing for visitors. Anyone want to approach the board? Right? May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? David, thank you. Do I have a second? Edith, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. All right. Now may I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss the superintendent's contract? Thank you, Susanna. Thank you, Edith. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So we will go into executive session at 8:35 p.m.
Someone's got to shut this stuff off.
I think Willie's coming.